right, let's talk about the big story. After over 3 years, the Zee-Sony merger has finally been called off. This entire saga has come to an end. Sony and Zee both put out statements today explaining why the deal has been called off. So Sony says that the issue is that terms of agreement were not fulfilled, terms of the merger were not fulfilled, and they've also invoked arbitration seeking $90 million as termination fee from Zee. Meanwhile, Zee on its part says that they deny all the claims that Sony has made. They in fact were very, very willing to take the deal ahead, and Puneet Goenka was even willing to step down as MD and CEO. Having said that, the question is now what happens next? Is there any hope for this deal to go forward? Will it go into a legal tangle now? And what's the story that follows? To speak on this, I'm joined by my colleagues Sajid Pangat and Payaswini. I'm also speaking with a top lawyer today. Murali is joining us today to talk about the entire story. Murali Neelkantan is joining us today. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much. Sajid, let's begin. We had this conversation over the last few days that it seems to be an impasse and finally talks have broken down. But what do you make of the fact that for the first time, Zee is coming out and saying Puneet Goenka was willing to step down and that was the bone of contention?
That's what been discussed in the media, that Puneet Goenka was the bone of contention, but it seems that there are many other conditions that needed to be met before and that's what we're getting to know from some of the sources, that Puneet Goenka was one of the things which has been actively discussed in the media, but there were other bone of contention which the Zee was supposed to complete. And it wasn't able to complete before the timeline ends. To give a perspective, December 22nd was the date by when the entire merger should have been completed, and in case if the merger is still pending, then the agreement allowed for a 30-day period wherein both the parties can come on a good faith negotiation to discuss how much more time is required to complete the formalities. That period also ended on Jan 20th. Both the parties did not agree on on the contours of based on which they can extend the timelines. What Zee has come out very categorically is that one of the contentions, which is regard to the principal who will be holding the seat, is something which Zee has agreed on, that Puneet Goenka can step down to let the merger go through, and they had also asked for a 6-month extension period. That's what the statement says.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it also talks about a director coming on the board of the company. We don't know the clarity on that part of it. It seems that if Puneet was to step down, then he would be a director on the company, on the merged company. That could have been one of the issues which may be the reasons why the deal got stalled, or the talks got stalled, and then eventually the timeline ended.
Yeah, but it seems like perhaps Sony was not willing to go forward with the current situation. Interesting statement from Puneet Goenka, who is in Ayodhya today, and he put it out saying after 2 years this deal has fallen through, but I'm looking forward to what comes next. In terms of the legal implications, let me come to Payaswini on this. So there are various angles to this. One is, of course, there's an ongoing SEBI investigation into the promoters of Zee. There are creditors to whom Zee owes money. This case had first gone to the NCLT, and if you look at the press release, they say very clearly that all options, including legal ones, are open. What are the scenarios that we could see playing out, Payaswini?
Yeah, a lot of crystal gazing here to do, Tamanna. Thank you. So this deal has had a tumultuous past, right? And what's sort of because we don't know the exact terms of why Sony has now sent a termination notice, so we'll sort of look at some of the standard contract situation that plays out in these M&A deals with Murali in just a bit. But what's sort of seeming to me here is a little the specific conditions that were not being met none of the parties or neither of the parties have spelled it out. Sajid pointed out that there was contention on Goenka's leadership of the merged entity. Zee says Goenka was ready to step down. We also understand that the board position was something that Goenka was not budging on, and that could have been why Sony sent this termination notice. But it seems like a cute out for Sony. This deal has been in the works for 2 years. They were sort of patient partners in all of the regulatory hurdles that this deal was facing. We've discussed with Murali and on the fine print on this platform earlier that it was unlikely that Sony was not in the know of the alleged diversion of funds that has now come to the fore or that has now been talked about in the various legal forums. So why is it that that has become or made Sony jittery now? Uh, Goenka leading the company, that was a sort of, in the deal, a tenure of 5 years. Sony, in this current scenario, could have made peace with the fact that, he's not going to lead the company, but may have a board position, something they were comfortable with all along so far, right? And it needs to be pointed out that none of the courts today prevent, or rather, none of the any of the legal investigations, or there's no legal overhang today on why Goenka can't be appointed as MD CEO or get a board position, because the SEBI order was overturned by the Securities Appellate Tribunal, and SEBI has, as far as I remember, not even approached the Supreme Court yet against that SAT order. The objections of the various financial creditors that had lent to several Zee companies, those got set aside by the National Company Law Tribunal. So it's sort of unclear that why Sony has suddenly got jittery, because some of these things related to alleged diversion of funds would have come at the due diligence stage. Goenka leading the company from the front, that apparently, as he says, was something that they agreed, to take away from the,
Right.
deal. The board position is the only question mark, but did that merit Sony to terminate the deal, given the various the market, scenarios that everybody was saying this deal will open up for Sony? It's a little sort of surprising that was the straw in the camel's back.
And considering that good faith negotiations were still on, Murali, great to speak with you on NDTV Profit and have you on the show. Thank you for your patience. Now that we've set the stage with Sajid and Payaswini contextualizing what this whole corporate tussle was about, are we now seeing chapter 2? In a sense, or season 2, in the style of some of the content that Sony and Zee puts out. And this season 2 is all about going back to the courts, because there is a big fat, arbitration penalty that Sony is slapping on Zee.
I think, when Payaswini and I spoke a couple of years ago on this, our view was that Sony has a nice way out of this if it doesn't go according to plan. The accounts were always, a bone of contention, potentially. And I suspect that there are conditions precedent before this merger could have been consummated. And if I was, Sony's lawyer on this, cleaning up the accounts would be one of the CPs. And I suspect that has not happened. The NCLT order approving the merger against the objections of the creditors happened because the creditors were protected in the merger. So the assumption the NCLT makes is that the creditors are protected, the merged entity is stronger financially than each of the entities, and therefore the creditors cannot have any objection to this. Now, therefore, in a way, Sony now has to deal with all these creditors. Speculation, purely, but if I was a lawyer, I would have thought, can we get accounts cleared so that we're all on the same page as to who are these creditors, how much money is owed, how much money is due from related parties, and how can that all be cleaned up before the merger is consummated? I suspect that is where the discussions may not have succeeded. I don't think it's about the director on the board. I don't think it's about Puneet Goenka stepping down from the board. Those are not usually big issues. I think it is to do fundamentally with Sony being unhappy with the accounts. I can't see any other reason why Sony would want to walk away from this.
Well, would they have taken 2 years to come to this conclusion, Murali? That's the question. And then now what next? What do you make of this $90 million sort of IOU that they've put forward? As I understand it, the one calling off the deal is the one who pays the penalty.
Not quite. So a break fee can be paid out depending on the relationship of the parties. So a person who's been invited as a white knight to rescue is also entitled to a break fee. In this case, it could be seen that Sony came to rescue Zee. And so the deal could have had a break fee for Sony if this merger didn't happen. To answer the question on why couldn't they have figured this out earlier, of course they figured it out earlier. I'm sure they figured it out earlier. But it's during the process the last 2 years that Zee may have had a chance to clean up its accounts and say, reverse these transactions, make sure these people are paid, get the money back from related parties. All of this should be done. And we want to see a cleaned up balance sheet on 31st December. Maybe they didn't see the cleaned up balance sheet and accounts by 31st December. And that was a good reason to walk away. I'm speculating, but considering the history of this, I would think as a lawyer, that might be the place where there was disagreement.
Sajid, we don't want to speculate about what happens next with both sides, but suffice to say, as we've been discussing, this was an important deal for both. Not one that they can walk away from very, very easily. The stakes perhaps higher for Zee. What are the options and scenarios that we see forward? And let's just recap what Puneet Goenka has tweeted today, where he's talked about how a deal that he worked for 2 years has fallen through. He says, I received a message that the deal that I've spent 2 years envisioning and working towards has fallen through despite my best and most honest efforts. I believe this to be a sign from the Lord. I resolve to move ahead positively and work towards strengthening Bharat's pioneering M&E company for all its stakeholders. He needs funds to do that, doesn't he?
The thing is that just to add to what Murali was saying, look at the trade receivables, which is there in the balance sheet of Zee Entertainment. It's growing on a quarter-to-quarter basis, and it's coming from some of the related parties, which is there. So at the end of March, if the trade receivable was 1,500 odd crores, it has gone to nearly 2,100 odd crores, which is coming in. Now, what are trade receivables for Zee? It could be, the cable and distribution fees, which are coming from various related parties, whether it's Dish or City Cable or any other party which owes it. So that money is going up. The outstanding is going up for Zee, and that could be one of the reasons, financial reasons, why the Sony board is a little jittery about it, because there hasn't been any effort in the last 2 years to recover many of this from the Zee, from the people who owe to Zee or the companies or related party that owe to Zee, and that's what when I said that Puneet Goenka was one of the reasons. The other reasons, while Sony hasn't spelled it out or neither Zee has spelled it out, it is coming to the financial condition of Zee, which is deteriorating, because 2,000 odd crores of trade receivables lying on the books is something which any company which is trying to bring in money of 10,000 odd crores into the company would be worried about, and there's no effort to reduce that trade receivables.
Yeah.
So going forward, it is going to be a tough task for Zee, because now, so far it was Sony which was asking for this to be cleaned up. Now it's going to be the shareholders who will be asking, and and some of the institutions who are invested in Zee are going to ask for this cleanup to happen and come clean on it. Zee has taken some kind of write-offs in the past with respect to related party receivables. And this is going to be another challenge for Zee going forward, and that's going to be one of the key reasons which would be keeping the stock under pressure going forward.
Yeah, and we'll get a view in just a second on what we expect to happen with the stock. Now, the question over here, and let me come to you, Prachi, on this, is your other shareholders. because remember, the context, Sony was coming in as a white knight. Preceding the whole Zee-Sony leg of the story, you had an Invesco who was very unhappy, was pushing for a regime change. There were other buyers maybe on the horizon, and now you still have shareholders, a significant proportion of shareholders who have to figure out what to do next. Do you see those aspects also going to court? Payaswini?
So, Tamanna, there are a bunch of financial creditors who have lent to, the SL Group companies on the personal guarantee of Mr. Subhash Chandra. So those, I would think, would be very happy with this outcome, because the non-compete that was going to Mr. Chandra indirectly via, or rather allegedly going to Mr. Chandra via a Mauritius-based entity, that also falls through because now the deal is terminated. So that leg of the, I think, the dispute will now fall away. What happens in terms of Sony Zee, to my mind, is less important than what the point that Sajid made. The financial institutions might now do to get Zee to clean up its act. I think what will play out between Sony and Zee now is the arbitration. As I'm not sure what the seat of it that is, because the agreement is not public. So the fight there is of 90 million, but Zee has got a lot to lose in terms of shareholder value, in terms of perception, in terms of what the fate of the company will be, because a lot of these perceptions of diversion of funds, Mr. Goenka's insistence on a board position, given the many pending investigations against him, are not going to attract a suitor anytime soon.
But having said that, I have AK Prabhakar on the line, Head Research, IDBI Capital Markets and Securities. Hi, Mr. Prabhakar. Thank you for speaking with us today. I was just looking at it. The Zee stock has been up 74% since September 21, which is when the deal went through. And of course, since 17th of December, the stock has fallen about 17.5%. Suffice to say, we are expecting a negative reaction, but how deep do you think the cut will be tomorrow, Mr. Prabhakar?
No, talking about tomorrow will be very difficult. No, but over a period of time, the stock should correct at least 20-25%. Now, because in the last 1.5 years, the performance of the company has been very bad. Previously, they used to make a revenue of nearby 8,000 crores and profit over 1,000 crores. In the FY23, they hardly made profit. In the last 6 months also, they made some losses. So, things are not very good. So we need good leadership. With promoter group holding only 4%, that is very negative now for investors. So you need somebody who has skin in the game. Now they need to run the ship properly, which is not happening there. That is the important thing which investors should look out. So whoever is holding, they need to bring in new leadership so that they can they have a very good channels and very good viewership, and it has to be focused. And if that comes back, I think Zee will be profitable and it will create value for investors.
Yeah, as of now, the leadership issue continues. But having said that, what do you think will be the immediate impact, Prabhakar, of the deal being called off?
It will have a negative impact on Zee. Anyway, Sony is not listed here, so we will not be talking about it. Zee Limited will have minimum 20-25% erosion in its value. It trades at 22,000 crore market cap. 20-25% erosion is possible in the next few months.
20 to 25% erosion in market cap is possible. What are the cues that the markets would be looking for now, or investors would be looking for now, Prabhakar, as the story goes on from here? I mean, very cryptic message from Puneet Goenka on social media saying that he's going to work to, build up the company, etc. But the line of creditors will be a problem, isn't it? The financial weakness overhang still remains on the company.
Yeah, no, the Sony Zee deal was something which was icing on the cake, and now that is out of the way. And you have other media companies, which have been consolidating, and to match that consolidated players, Zee should have merged with Sony. Whatever could have been, the nitty-gritty, it should have been worked out, because media as a space is getting consolidated. Very soon there will be very limited players, and they will have very good money power to play. So in that space, you cannot fight it alone. So I think it will be very difficult if the deal doesn't go through. So investors have bought in, hoping that Sony's Zee deal will go through, and if that doesn't happen, other things will take time. Maybe if whatever Mr. Goenka is saying, it will take at least 1-2 years for him to prove that he can come back. But at least for next 6 months, 1 year, it is indeed downward trajectory.
Yeah, downward trajectory for the next 6 months at least. Thank you for that, A.K. Prabhakar there. Expect to see a deep cut in trade tomorrow, and a 20 to 25% downside from current levels is what A.K. Prabhakar is saying. We're going to wrap this conversation here, but Murali, thank you for joining us. Great to speak with you. Payaswini, Sajid, thank you as well. This seems to be the close of at least the latest chapter of the Zee Sony saga, but like we've been saying, let's see what's in store for us in season 2.